Well, I guess it's my turn now. We're going to be talking about, in this segment, we'll be hearing from two young professionals who chose very different roads to success on their learning journeys. So I'm your host, Marilyn Markham, and I'm speaking to you from Richmond in Virginia in the USA. This is my first stop on my digital nomad journey, so I feel I'm on theme. Sneha Satish joins us from New York in the USA as well, and Rayner is in Singapore. Sneha and Rayner, welcome.
Hi,
everyone. It's so nice to meet you all. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. To start us off, I'd like to ask you about your background and your current occupation, as well as the journey in between. Shall we do ladies first?
Yeah, of course. Pleasure to be here and welcome. I am Sneha Satish, and I work as an account supervisor at Stanton Public Relations and Marketing. We are a B2B focused strategic communications firm, and we're based in New York City. So why did I choose PR as a career, right? When I was graduating from high school, that's when I knew I wanted to pursue a career in media. But I didn't know, media is so vast. I didn't know which way to go. And so I pursued arts and humanities as a field of study. And for my bachelor's, I took up a triple major in psychology, media and communications, and literature. So in my 3 years of undergrad, I interned as a photojournalist at a regional tabloid in Bangalore, India. That's where I'm from. And in my second year, I interned as a copywriter at an advertising agency. And in my third year, I interned as a PR, public relations intern at a PR agency. So that's when, I really had to try different sorts of media and try to figure out what my sweet spot was. And that's when I knew that was, what I wanted to pursue as a career. So I looked up a lot within the country, India at the time, I'm talking 6 to 7 years ago, which was only up and coming. Public relations was not, an academia or a field of study that people would pursue as a full-time career. So I looked abroad. I came across the program in Syracuse University at the Newhouse School, and it turned out to be one of the best PR programs in the country. And if I really was making the move halfway across the world, I wanted to be in, one of the best programs. So I made the move, but Syracuse University was, Syracuse as a place was unknown to us, unheard of. And I looked up a lot more, and I started to prep to apply for my master's program. And during that time, I volunteered at Teach for India. It is a nonprofit organization which connects us to kids from underprivileged backgrounds. So I volunteered there for a whole year while I was prepping for my GRE and stuff. So that's what I did. And finally, I made the move to Syracuse University to pursue my to pursue my master's in PR.
That's an amazing journey. That's awesome. Rayner, tell us some about yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rayner. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lumatics. I'm calling in from sunny Singapore. I started Lumatics about 5 years ago when I was a freshman in university. Lumatics empowers hotels, airlines, and large commercial kitchens with data analytics to reduce their food waste, costs, and environmental footprint. Today, we are revolutionizing food waste management in 14 countries in Asia Pacific. We work with some of the world's leading hotel chains and airlines like Accor, Hyatt, Four Seasons, Singapore Airlines, Etihad Airways, and with our solution, we've helped our partners reduce as much as 40% of their food waste and really helping them take steps to reaching their food waste reduction goals. So by day, you can typically find me in a suit, meeting with executive chefs and general managers and engaging with them on their food waste problem and sharing about how Lumetics can really help them with that. By night, I'm typically chilling at home in front of my computer, learning and researching about the crypto, NFT, and DeFi space, or just watching docu-series on Netflix. How I got into starting my own company was actually a little bit by accident. So when I was a freshman in university, many of us in my university, the Singapore University of Social Sciences, we have to embark on a service learning project. So I took that opportunity to work with and partner with a NGO here in Singapore that works with youths who are at risk, right? Youths who come from more underprivileged backgrounds. And my main role was to be a befriender, a older brother, if you like, just to really spend time with kids, the younger, with the youth, and to have somewhat of a positive influence in their life. And it was through my volunteering experience that I come across families that, struggle quite badly to the point where they can only afford one meal a day. And that led me to, really feel quite a bit of injustice, because at the same time, I was learning about Singapore's food waste situation. So that got me to do a little bit more research on what were the available solutions out there. And thankfully, I realized that, there were some NGOs and charities working with these families to help them get access to food. And I also realized that, there were some companies looking at food waste recycling. So that's great. But what I realized, however, was that there were almost no companies in the world looking at food waste prevention. So that spurred me to sort of look at starting my own company, because fundamentally I started to grow this conviction that prevention is far more important than recycling and redistribution. So I saw an opportunity and I started Lumetics.
Well, thank you. I think that you'll get full marks from Flavia and Shazib on that initiative, because I agree. Prevention is better than trying to cure that. But I find that both of your journeys are really compelling, because you both found your inspiration while you were volunteering as a youth. And I think that that's really telling that, you find uncharted territory when you actually venture out of the path well trodden by your contemporaries. So I think that's super cool. But what I find is that both of you took a personal risk. Sneha, you left everyone you knew to go to a totally different country to follow a path that no one in your environment had chosen. There was no academia that followed that path. Rayner, you dropped out of school. You went ahead and created a new company. Everyone probably thought you were crazy. But I think that you don't achieve anything great if you don't take a risk. But risk is so personal. So I wanted to hear from each of you, from your own perspective, like, how big of a risk was it, and what really propelled you forward to pursue it? Because it's not an easy thing to do. Rayner.
Yeah, happy to go first. To be honest, I don't really think that what I did, so sort of taking a break from school and pursuing Lumetics full time, honestly, I don't really think that that was all that risky. And it may come as a shock to many of you guys who are hearing this, but hear me out. In fact, I personally feel that what I did was probably one of the least risky thing I could have done. I'm young, I'm single, don't have a lot of financial liabilities at this stage in my life. And so I thought that starting my own company, having, to sort of eat maybe ramen noodles for the next 3 years, not draw a paycheck, that was something I could do, because I still am supported. I'm living with my family at the moment. I still have a roof over my head. I don't have a family to support. I don't have a house to pay or car loan to pay. Honestly, starting my own company right now is probably one of the least riskiest things I could have done, as opposed to, say, for example, if I were to start a company if I was 35. If I'm 35, I would be in a very different life stage. I might have a family, hopefully, kids to sort of support, housing loan to pay. In Singapore, housing is crazy. Car, maybe loan to pay and whatnot. Basically, a lot of other financial liabilities that I would need to sort of bear. And so I think sort of leaving school, or rather taking a break from school right now to pursue Lumetics and sort of give that 100% right now, is probably a safer option as compared to maybe starting my company after I've graduated, or maybe when I'm slightly older and maybe in a different life stage.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Great. I guess for me, it was fairly risky because when I told my family I wanted to move to the United States to pursue a career in public relations, they called me crazy because it's not a thing that comes naturally for a lot of Indians. We generally choose the path of engineering or medicine or finance, and this was very unconventional. So moving across, I did take the student loan on myself. So, it was an offbeat career too to start off with, to find employers, who would be willing to welcome international students. So that was a risk I was definitely taking. But I guess I did meet fantastic people along the way, who I connected with through networking, who sort of mentored me in my career. And yeah, I think that was definitely a risk I was taking in terms of, choosing a field that was so uncommon to all of us, and moving halfway across the world.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I did a bit of that myself. And I find it interesting. You mentioned the people that you met along the way. And I imagine that if you go into a field where your friends and family are not, you're going to need to create a whole new network by yourself. And so for me, that's my next question to you both. I'm sure that you didn't get to where you got to by yourself, but how did you go ahead and position yourself for success by creating a network, a professional network around you?
Yeah, for sure. I can take this one, Rayner, if that's okay. So when I started out, I guess the first thing that they told me at Syracuse was network, right from day one, with your peers, with your professors, with industry professionals, with guest speakers, with everyone you come along the way. And because you don't know who will help you at what time, or like who will help you spread the word around, right? And so I really took this to heart from day one. And I also made LinkedIn my best friend, where, I connected with a lot of people on LinkedIn, cold and mailed them, not knowing them, just sent a note saying, I'd love to connect with you for an informational interview, or for a coffee. Could we get a coffee sometime? I'd love to get your advice, mentorship in the field that I've chosen. So I guess the one thing that I would add is when you're connecting with people that you absolutely don't know, try to find some commonality, whether it's similar interests, whether it's a shared background, or where you can be additive to the conversation that you want to have with them, right? So find some commonality into what you want to say to someone who you're networking with.
That's a good point. Thank you.
I just want to echo what was shared, and I think maybe some of us in the audience today might be thinking, will someone, who is a professional and experienced sort of industry expert really have the time for me? Will they sort of, really invest in me, or even meet me up for coffee? And I just want to say that you will actually be really, really surprised at how many people today in their various industries are so willing to actually spend time and to invest in the next generation. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that, every single person you reach out to in LinkedIn will definitely reply you, but I can bet you that if you send 100 or 200 LinkedIn messages, cold LinkedIn messages, you probably will get at least one or two. And that's the thing, right? You only need one. You don't need 10, you don't need 50, you don't need 100. Sometimes you only need one. And personally, I've been, a great sort of beneficiary of that, where people who I totally did not know, right? I just sort of reached out to them, and I still remember one of my early mentors. He's a really respected executive, 20 plus years, 30 years in his field. And I thought, no way this guy would ever meet me. But I just gave it a shot anyway. I shared with him about my story, and then I wanted to catch up and meet him for coffee to learn about his experience. And I sort of, and he replied, right? And I thought, okay, this guy is so generous. He's just going to give me like maybe 30 minutes of his time. He sat down with me for a whole 3 hours. just to share me about his experience, and and I was shocked. And at the end of that meeting, I asked him. I said, why are you so interested? Why are you so willing to sort of spend time with me? And he said, Rayner, I've worked a long time, 30 years in this industry, and sometimes when I lay back in my bed, and I wish I started my own company. And he said that meeting you and sharing my experience with you and hearing about your story is actually his way of living his dream through me. And that fascinated me, and I realized that as I met more people, a lot of them shared similar experiences where they're so willing to invest because they want to live, I guess, maybe part of their dream through young people, or we young people energize them, right? So yeah, just an encouragement to some of you guys here today who might be thinking, will anybody really give me time? You never know, and sometimes all you really need is just one person to respond to you.
Yeah,
that's so true.
I would just add on to that, saying, another way of networking. Of course, this was pre-COVID era. I used to go to a lot of events, conferences, award ceremonies and such in person, and that was a great way of meeting people. And funnily enough, that's how I landed on my current job. I met with a recruiter from a time during Syracuse, and she just got talking to me. She's like, oh, what are your career interests? Where do you want to be? What are the kind of projects you want to work on and such? So she connected me with my current employer. And I guess a fun fact also about me is that I've never applied to a single job online. It's always been through connecting with people and extending and expanding that network. And it also, networking doesn't mean it's a one-off sort of conversation. You have to sort of build that relationship over time. If people are giving their time to you, you have to be respectable and sort of at least keep them updated, tell them what you're doing, or ask them, talk about industry trends and such. So there's a skill and art of continuing and developing the relationship, and that comes as part of networking.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And yeah, there's work on both sides, right? It's not just the mentor pouring out, the mentee also reaches out a lot. I think that starting the relationship is often the most challenging part of it. So would you be able to share with us just your tips about choosing? What do you choose about yourself to put in a professional profile or introduction when you meet someone for the first time as your hook? Like, how do you choose that? Because, you can start by saying I was born, blah, blah, blah. It's a nice story, but it doesn't really always work. So what would be your advice to people trying to figure out how to approach others?
The first time I was going to a conference, that was a question that I put forward to my dean, saying how I'm going to be meeting with all of these, C-suite level executives and high professionals in the industry. Why would they be interested in talking to me, right? And she said, Sneha, have a 30-second sort of elevator pitch about yourself, which would, tell them about you, which would create a common ground for them to finally continue the conversation. So I think you should really sort of customize the pitch to the elevator pitch when you're talking to different people. But say if you're talking to an HR or someone on the human resource front, you talk more about your leadership styles and such. But if you're connecting more with, say, a industry veteran, I would talk more about, my most recent experience or a project that really challenged me, or that I loved working on, that set me apart. So I think there's a lot of customization to what you have to say that plays a big role.
Yeah, it's a bit what Flavia was telling us, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Rayner? How did you choose what to tell people about yourself?
For me personally, I just tried to be myself as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I just shared my personal story on how I'm passionate about looking at the food waste problem. I think sometimes people forget that these high executives, they go through a whole day or week or a month just dealing with really challenging problems in their day job. Sometimes what gets them all excited is just someone that they can relate to on a personal level, and just be sincere, right? Just be authentic. And I find that the best relationships I have with my mentors are, yes, the ones where they're helping me with my business, but the ones where to some extent I'm like their friend. And yeah, they're like 30 or 40 years older than me, but it really sort of starts from there. At least that's my experience. And just sort of really being genuine and really just wanting to sort of create and generate sort of authentic conversations. Sometimes, these executives, they're just in a room full of other corporate executives, and they go through all of those challenges. Sometimes they just want, to just chill a little bit and have some real conversations, right? Authentic ones. So at least for me, that's what I found to be sort of useful. Just be yourself. Sometimes I firmly believe like you don't really need a lot of mentors. Like sometimes you just need one or two, right?
Yeah.
One or two that you can really connect with. And that's honestly more than enough.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we're solidly in the realm of professional relationships, period. And they're not always easy. But also the journeys we take risks, right? Everyone takes a risk, try something new that they've never tried before. Looking back at your own journeys, and we'll start with you, Rayner. Are there any mistakes you've made or things that you wish you'd have done differently that someone could learn from today?
I honestly don't know where to begin because there are far too many. I've made many mistakes in running Lumitics. Thankfully, none of them have been too costly. But I guess I think maybe the biggest mistake I've made was not starting earlier. I remember, when I was much younger, I always had ideas about wanting to start my company or start a company. But for some reason, I let fear consume me. And that was the reason why I didn't start, right? Fear of failure, fear of what other people would think about me. And so if I could, magically at this point, speak to my younger self, I would tell him this, right? I would tell him, I say, look, Rayner, you got to figure out for yourself what you truly love and enjoy. And don't let other people define success for you. Because if you listen to their narrative or you follow their idea of success, you may not be happy. I'm thankful that there were mentors who helped me understand that, and the liberation, I can tell you, right? The liberation from just realizing that, actually I should just pursue what I really enjoy and love, and not let basically other people's opinions of me sort of chain me down. Yeah. I think I've lived a lot of my teenage years under that sort of chain of having to live up to other people's expectations, my family, society, and just to finally come to a point where I could sort of break free from that. Was a sort of magical moment for me. So I wish I sort of got to there earlier in my life.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you.
And I think if I had to tell my younger self something, I would say worry less, because I am an overthinker and I worry a lot. Similar to what Rayner said, it's always what if that didn't work out? What if they said no to me? What if this? What if that, right? So I would really worry less, because when you're really doing something with conviction, whether it's picking a career for yourself, which I think now when I look back 10 years ago, and everyone in my family thought I would not, pave a path or find a career in the field that I chose. I stood ground for what I wanted, but that also comes with having that conviction. And when you're really picking anything for yourself with conviction, you're moved by that already, so you need to worry less.
That's a good one. So, question from the chat. We all understand that we need to overcome fear, but fear is paralyzing. So how do you even start to overcome your fear?
Personally, for me, my mentors were a large part of that. For me, I had to unlearn basically 18, 20 years of sort of society telling me a certain narrative, and that you will only be successful if you follow this narrative. And so it was challenging. One of the largest challenges actually when I started my company was not so much about, oh, how do we build our first product? How do we acquire our first client? It was, my family, right? And they sort of objecting to some extent, me sort of pursuing my company and me sort of putting school on hold. And I was sort of crippled by that a little bit, right? I'm Asian, I'm Singaporean. I don't want to disappoint my parents, filial piety is a large part of the culture I grew up in. And so those are fears, right? But I think how I sort of started to sort of overcome that are really my mentors, who really sort of helped me to sort of really understand that at the end of the day, right, I should prioritize my personal happiness, and anything, and I should endeavor and really figure out all ways possible for me to be happy. And I realized that if I walk down the path of, my parents' aspirations for me, I will not be happy. And in fact, that relationship would then become sour because I will probably spend the rest of my life blaming my parents. And so my mentors helped me to see that actually maybe the better way for me to sort of have a meaningful and fruitful relationship with my parents is actually for me to go and pursue my company. And yeah, maybe in the short run, right, there might be a bit, it might be a little bit tense, but I think overall, I will be in a way better position to then sort of, love them, care for them, and sort of build that relationship. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering that question, but
you have answered the
that
question.
was helpful.
You sure have. Sneha, how did you go ahead and start overcoming your fear?
I first things first, I really stood ground for what I wanted, right? And I think when you have that solid conviction, I think that is the first step of already overcoming a lot of fear. And whether it's meeting with new people or giving a presentation in the office, another thing that I would add is a lot of practice. Give yourself enough time to practice ahead of whatever task that is you have ahead of you. And don't walk into anything without, giving yourself your due practice. So I think that's something I would add.
Yeah, that's a good one. Be prepared. Shockingly, our time has just flown by. But I feel like I've learned a lot from both of you that can help me on my path. First of all, I really need to up my game with my networking. I probably need to spend more time with my mentors. and yeah, I need to, maybe change mindsets or challenge myself with a different mindset than the one that I've grown up with to actually start this journey and move forward. So I think that that's something that's applicable to anybody at any point in their journey. So I just want to thank you both for such valuable insights and advice. I hope that everyone had something to take away. The best way to start is to put it in practice immediately. So I'd like to invite everyone to connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm going to drop our contacts in the chat. Here you go. And then I'd like to introduce what comes right after this panel. So our next panel is going to be East meets West, and it's a journey of cross-cultural considerations in marketing brands. But before we do that, we have two treats for you. The first one will be a demo of Lumetics, Rayner's food waste reduction AI, because when he told me about it the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, how does that actually work? I need to see this. So if you're like me, you're going to be satisfied in just a second. And right after that, we're going to have a wonderful performance of a traditional Indian dance from Isha Patel and Sarika Nayak. So enjoy, and thank you, Rayner and Sneha, for your insights today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The average Singaporean doesn't understand just the sheer amount of food waste that a typical restaurant or hotel would generate, just the amount of trays and bins that are filled with waste. When I first learned about the food waste problem, well, firstly, I was utterly shocked. In my opinion, prevention is far more important than redistribution and recycling. And given that there were almost no solutions in the prevention space, I saw an opportunity and started Lumitics.
So now we're inside Sky's restaurant's kitchen. What we basically do is we prep the vegetables or the meat or the fish individually, each individual element of the dishes. So like, for example, here we prep the chicory or the Belgian endive. And then basically what we're going to do is we'll just put it into the tracker itself. And through working with Rayner's team, they'll have actually taken an image of this before. So when we actually place it in here, it will take a photograph and then it will give us a weight afterwards. So you do it ingredient by ingredient. So when this bin is full, then we just do our normal process where we actually will dispose of it. And then we'll actually get a report from the team on how much waste we've actually done in this particular week on all the different ingredients from the meat, the fish, the vegetables, all the way through. So we can actually go back and look at the costs that we have and the recipes that we have and see how much product that we're using and how much product that we're actually wasting.
अक्षत फूले